My name is Arthur, and I'm in my early 40s. I inherited an old stone mansion overlooking the sea and the surrounding olive groves from my father. The mansion wasn't just a home for me, it was a living testament to my past, my roots, and the memories etched into every corner of my childhood. The olive groves, meanwhile, had been my family's livelihood for generations, a symbol of our connection to the land. The scent of the earth, the whisper of the olive trees always calmed me, bringing a sense of peace. In the spring of my life, I met Elara, who swept in like the wind. With her emerald green eyes, she was like a Mediterranean goddess. A painter weary of the city's chaos and artificiality, she dreamed of a life intertwined with nature just like me. When I met her, I felt as if the mansion and the olive groves had merged with her spirit. Ilara painted my gray world with vibrant brushstrokes. We married. The emerald ring I placed on her finger wasn't just a piece of jewelry. It was a symbol of our souls, intertwined forever, our bond to the earth, and the deep love we shared. The first years of our marriage were filled with memories whispered beneath the olive trees, moments painted crimson by the sunset. We restored the mansion, preparing a special studio for Elara. She painted canvases inspired by the olive trees and crafted ceramic objects. I, meanwhile, focused on modernizing olive oil production and developing organic farming. The dreams we built together were as strong and bountiful as olive pits. We wanted to open an art and nature center at the mansion. We would host guests, showcase Elara's art, and market our own organic olive oil and other products. This was not just my dream, but ours. Elara would manage the center's artistic programs and guest relations, while I handled the operational and agricultural aspects. Over time, our business began to flourish. The Art and Nature Center attracted significant interest from both locals and visitors from out of town. Ilara's paintings quickly gained renown, and our olive oil earned a reputation for its quality. It was amidst this busy period that a man we could call the Prince of Shadows, Julian, entered our lives. Julian was the young and ambitious CEO of an international real estate company. We met him at Ilara's art exhibition. Julian expressed his admiration for Ilara's artistic talent and his desire to promote her on an international scale. At first, this flattered me. I was pleased that Ilara's art was appreciated. However, Julian's visits gradually became more frequent. His excuses were always new projects, large investments, and Ilara's international promotion. They could talk for hours about Ilara's art. I tried to join these conversations, but often found myself feeling excluded. That special bond between them, that shared language, began to bother me. A few times I asked Ilara, "Don't you think Julian is coming around a bit too often?" She would respond defensively, "Arthur, he's just a business partner. These meetings are important for the future of my art." The slight rise in her voice, the defensive look in her eyes, gnawed at me. But I was a traditional man who believed a husband should trust his wife. Doubting her wasn't something I thought I should do, or so I believed. During that period, I had embarked on a large project to install a new irrigation system in the olive groves. This was crucial for our family's future, and I dedicated all my energy to it. I was in the olive groves from early morning until late at night, Elara, meanwhile, was constantly meeting with Julian. "We're exchanging ideas for new projects," she'd say. "We're discussing the idea of opening an international gallery." And I naively believed her. Perhaps I wanted to believe her. Even though something deep inside bothered me, I tried to suppress that discomfort. One evening when I came home from the olive groves to the mansion, I couldn't find Elara. I called her phone, but she didn't answer. I was worried. She arrived half an hour later. "Where were you, Elara?" I was worried. I asked. "I had an important meeting with Julian. I couldn't let you know," she said. There was a slight tremor in her voice, and a shadow in her eyes I hadn't seen before. I couldn't sleep that night. A worm of doubt had crept into my mind. In the morning, on Elara's vanity table, I found a note hastily left, with Julian written on it, and a piece of paper. The note read, "Elara, we've acquired the mansion and the olive groves. They're ours now. I love you so much." On the paper was a sketch of a painting Elara had drawn specifically for me. On the side of the drawing was a tiny note. "This painting will now be the symbol of our new mansion. Not yours, but ours." This was a shock to me. The painting was a draft for the logo of our Art and Nature Center, but the words in the note. At that moment, my world crumbled. I took out my phone and dialed the number on the note. It was me calling, but the person I was calling was Elara. She hadn't even saved my number. I wanted to deny it. Maybe there was a misunderstanding, I thought. But something inside me had shattered. I confronted Elara. "What does this mean, Elara?" I asked, my voice trembling. She denied it at first, then her eyes welled up. "Arthur, I'm tired of this life. Being with you stifles me. Julian offers me a new world, a brighter, more exciting world. The mansion and the olive groves will be better valued under his company's patronage," she said. The coldness in her voice, that cruel honesty, froze me. Something broke inside me. In that moment, everything lost its meaning. Every dream, every plan, every promise, every word she had shared with me was a lie. She had merely used my land and my name to plan her own ascent, and I hadn't even realized it. Elara left the mansion and the olive groves with Julian. Actually, she didn't just leave. They had transferred everything into their names. She left behind only an emptiness and a broken heart. The mansion, once the meaning of my life, now felt like a prison. Every corner held her memories, her presence, her scent, her sounds, her laughter. Everything reminded me of Elara, and it was an unbearable pain. For months I buried myself in the olive groves. Working the land was a kind of escape for me. I constantly busied myself with the trees to forget my pain, to silence my thoughts. But no matter how much I worked, the emptiness inside me wouldn't close. Julian and Elara had started a new company called Emerald Legacy. I followed them on social media. They had stolen my dreams, my ideas. They were now realizing the Art and Nature Center dream we had built together. They had even used my designs, my efforts, and the logo I had registered under my name. This was a blow not only to my heart but also to my soul. Anger, pain, betrayal, these emotions simmered within me like a volcano. As I saw their happy photos, my anger grew even stronger. The fire of revenge began to consume me. But this wouldn't be a simple revenge. It would be a slow, destructive vengeance, striking them at their most sensitive points. When Emily and I got married, I designed a special emerald ring for her. This was no ordinary ring. from a special piece of olive wood carved from the roots of an ancient olive tree, hidden in a safe deep within the mansion, passed down from my father. I had carved a code that held a special meaning for us. This code was a cipher known only to us. I had made a small cavity in the ring and placed that tiny piece of olive wood inside. From the outside, it looked like an ordinary ring. However, this ring also served as a key, providing access to the deed and financial data of the mansion and olive groves, all family secrets, and even my personal bank accounts. My father was quite knowledgeable about such matters and had taught me this system. This ring was, in essence, the key to our digital fortress. Elara also knew this secret. She even knew the code inside the ring by heart. It was a symbol of that special bond, that trust between us. And this ring would be the first step in my revenge plan. I was certain Elara was still wearing the ring. I knew her so well that knowing its sentimental value, I believed she would never take it off. Indeed, my entire plan would revolve around this ring. First, I needed to access all their company's financial data, customer lists, and even future projects. I worked for days at the old computer my father had left me. Thanks to that special code in the ring, I was able to access Elara's and Julian's computers. I spent nights at the computer like a hacker. I downloaded and copied all their data, how much they were earning, who they were working with, what projects they were discussing. I learned everything step by step. What I saw enraged me even more. They had registered my ideas, my designs, under their names. They were realizing everything I had dreamed of. They had taken my land from me. But now, this was my dream too. I would simply take it back from them. My second step was to gain their trust. I had to infiltrate their world. I reconnected with Elara's old art circle. I spoke to them about new projects in my olive groves. People were surprised by this sudden change in me, but I presented myself as a man who was fully dedicated to his work, trying to leave the past behind, a man who had returned to his land. I even attended a few social events, going to places where Elara and Julian were. I watched them from a distance. I smiled. I greeted them. I acted as if nothing had happened. This was the hardest part. My insides burning, yet remaining outwardly calm. A few months later, Elara and Julian announced they would be opening a booth at a major tourism exhibition. This was my opportunity. It was their biggest project, and they were planning a huge promotion. I also opened a booth to promote my own organic olive oil and art products. It was near theirs, but never conspicuous. I wanted to show that I had modernized my old, worn out workshop and was returning with new projects. As I passed by Elara and Julian's booth, I greeted them, congratulated them. Elara looked at me with surprise, while Julian smiled with a condescending expression. Arthur, we thought this business wasn't for you, he said. I just smiled. I'm learning, I replied. At the exhibition, Elara and Julian's booth was very crowded. They were proud of the designs I had created. I waited for an opportunity. One evening, near the exhibition closing, I caught a moment when Elara's booth was empty. I approached her. Elara, I want to show you something, I said. She was surprised. What is it, Arthur? She asked. This ring, I said, pointing to the ring on her finger. Do you know it has a secret? Elara's face turned white. I mentioned the code inside the ring. This code, wasn't it ours, Elara? You used this code. You stole our dreams. You stole my lands from me. Alara's eyes welled up. Arthur, I'm sorry, she said. I know I did you a great injustice, but Julian, he deceived me. He planned everything. This was the moment I had been waiting for. Elara had started blaming Julian to defend herself. A feeling of triumph filled me. My plan was actually much simpler. Inside that ring was a tiny USB drive. It contained all of Alara's correspondence with me, all our design ideas, even the original files of that famous mansion logo sketch I had drawn for her, and most importantly, digital copies of the original deed documents for the mansion and olive groves. The day before the exhibition, I had subtly mounted that USB drive onto Alara's ring. This was a matter of seconds, unnoticed by anyone. I had been following them, observing every moment. As Elara was in a panic, I said, Elara, do you know? This ring isn't just a key. I said, it's also a voice recorder. From the tiny voice recorder hidden in the ring, I had recorded all of Elara and Julian's conversations. How Julian manipulated Elara, how he planned to steal my ideas, how he planned to sideline me and seize the lands, how he convinced Elara. Everything was on record. At that moment, the shock and fear on Elara's face began to satisfy my desire for revenge. The next day was the last day of the exhibition. Elara and Julian were going to give a big presentation. The hall was packed. I was sitting in one of the front rows. Julian stepped onto the stage proudly, presenting my designs, my ideas, my lands, and my dreams as if they were his own achievements. Elara stood beside him, her face pale. Just as Julian reached the climax of his speech, I stood up. I gave Elara a signal. Elara, as if robotic, took the microphone from Julian's hand. The hall fell silent. My name is Elara, she said, her voice trembling, and I am a thief who stole the life and lands of the true owner of all these successes, my ex-husband, Arthur. These designs, these ideas, these dreams, this mansion, these olive groves, they all belong to him. The hall began to whisper in shock. Julian looked at Elara furiously, lunging towards her, but Elara continued. This ring, she said, showing the ring on her finger. This ring is the biggest proof of this betrayal. Then, turning to a large screen, Elara connected the USB drive hidden in her ring to the projector. On the screen, all the correspondence between me and Elara, all the emails, all the design drafts began to appear. My original logo, my original drawings, and most importantly, documents showing how the deed to the mansion and olive groves had been illegally transferred to Julian's name were there, exposed in their raw truth. The hall instantly filled with murmurs. People whispered in shock and anger. Julian's face turned crimson. But the biggest blow was yet to come. Elara, with trembling hands, activated the voice recorder inside the ring. In the hall, the audio recordings of Elara and Julian discussing their wicked plans, how they would steal my ideas, how they would sideline me and seize the lands, how he convinced Elara. Everything was out in the open. The hall instantly turned into a boiling cauldron. People were reacting to Julian and Elara. Some had stood up, shouting. Julian tried to grab the microphone in a panic, but Elara held on tight. As Elara spoke her final words, her eyes met mine. My mistake, Arthur, was losing my trust in you, and this is my punishment, she said. Then she descended from the stage and disappeared into the crowd. Julian, in shame, hastily left the stage. Security and authorities quickly pursued Julian. The exhibition area was suddenly in chaos. People looked at each other in surprise, trying to understand what had been said. Some turned to me with sympathy, while others went after Julian. I, however, stood tall. That emptiness, that pain, that anger inside me, all of it had been replaced by a strange sense of satisfaction. I had taken my revenge, but had it brought me peace? I didn't know. Elara was never seen again after that day. Julian, on the other hand, faced a major scandal. His company went bankrupt, all his assets were seized, and he was prosecuted for fraud. His name was blacklisted internationally. For me, however, life went on. The mansion and the olive groves were legally transferred back to my name. It was no longer just a workplace, but also a place of salvation. I created new projects, became more creative. People had learned my story and started flocking to my olive groves to support me. The Emerald and the Shadow Art and Nature Center, as I named it, achieved much greater success than expected. Alara's betrayal, in a way, had allowed me to be reborn from my ashes. The pain I had experienced in the past had made me stronger, more resilient. The love I had felt for Elara had been destroyed by betrayal, but the revenge that remained, to some extent, satisfied me. Perhaps this was my new beginning, a beginning where I would rebuild, independent of anyone, realizing only my own dreams.